All right, guys, so I am going to tell you one of the main things that I regret doing, other than not buying a bigger shop. One of the main things that I regret doing when I first started buying equipment, be it drill presses, mills, welding machines, whatever, and something that I really wish I knew because it would have saved me a lot of money and gotten me some much better equipment. In a nutshell, buy three-phase stuff because it's not that big of a pain to get set up to run, and it is awesome. So I'm going to show you guys two ways that I run three-phase machinery here in the shop. So there's three types of phase converters. I'm not an expert on how, electrical stuff works, but there's three ways to take regular 220 volt power, just a regular 3-prong plug, like this in this case. Plug design may vary, but just standard 220 volt household current. If you live in the US, I guess like in Germany or whatever, all the houses have three-phase wired to them, which is cool, but whatever. There's three common ways to get that into three-phase power, which you can use to run a machine like this big welder, or that lathe, or this big industrial bandsaw, or the iron worker over there. The first one is the one I do not recommend, and that is called a static phase converter. It's a little rectangular box, essentially with some capacitors inside, and you don't get true three-phase out of that. It causes the motor to heat up. It only produces like 60% of the power that it would on either of the other two methods. These things are cheap, that's why people buy them, but they're terrible. That's why I got rid of mine, and now I'm left with only these two things. So let me show you the other common way this is done. This is the other one that I don't recommend. This is called a VFD or VRD. VFD, variable frequency drive. It doesn't say, so I had to remember. Mine is a Hitachi, and basically the way this works is we flip the breaker for the lathe while we're reaching over everything that I've stacked here to make this building as non-OSHA compliant as humanly possible. So we just reach over all this stuff, and then we hit run, which takes regular 220 volt power in and spits out three-phase. I don't know how it does it. It makes no sense to me, but whatever. I will show you though that it works extremely, extremely well. This is what I use to power my lathe. These things are not very expensive. I think I paid somewhere between $300 and $500 for this specific one, but this was 4 years ago roughly, so I don't really remember. It was not that much money, and the reason why I don't recommend it is because it's not a proven system. They are fine. If you get one of these, I don't think you'll have any problems with it, at least for a while, but you have to understand, this thing is a computer. This is basically a small, computer type thing which goes on your wall. And will it be working in 50 years? Probably not. Will it be working in 20 years? I have my doubts, but maybe. Will it be working in 5 years? Probably. But there is one way which you can get three-phase power, and it will last essentially forever, and that is with this. This is my choice. I finally got this last summer. I wish I bought one of these like 4 or 5 years ago at a minimum. This is a rotary phase converter, and I love this thing, and it is awesome. So no one's sponsoring, no one's like paying me to get up here and say this stuff. I'm just rambling about these things, so I'm not going to tell you guys like what brand this is or whatever. I may or may not have gotten it for free, but whatever the case, I'm going to leave all that out because I just want to tell you guys why I like these things and why I really think they're the way to go. Basically, the way this works is this is an electric motor with the front shaft cut off. You can see it spinning there. And what this does, from my layman's understanding, is the 220 volt power side spins one part of the motor, and any motor is also a generator, so the other part generates three-phase power. So, you got 220 spinning it this way and three-phase power being generated over here. Something along those lines, but they work bloody excellent. They are not that much money. I mean, and I'm gonna tell you guys, I think these cost, depending on the size, and if you buy it new or used, I would expect to pay anywhere between $400 and $2,000 for a really, really nice one of these things. You can even make them yourself because most people don't have three-phase power. So therefore, there's not much demand for three-phase equipment and basically no demand for three-phase motors. So you can probably get on, whatever city's Craigslist you live in, and you can find a big motor like this. I want to say this is like 7.5 horsepower, maybe it's 5 horsepower. you can get one of these things for basically nothing, and then you just do some basic wiring and stick the rest of this together. Now mine is factory made. I didn't jack around with any of that. But the point is you can, and it is really, really cheap. I knew a guy when I lived down south of here. I think he told me he made his for like 200 bucks or something. And what's great about these is that they will last pretty much forever, because that's what big industrial grade electric motors do. They last for generations. And if you get one of these that's a good size one, it is something that will power your entire shop. Now mine, I've fabric cobbled 2 electrical outlets on. There's this one, the 914 for this giant bandsaw here, and then there's this cord which runs to that welder. I've also run the iron worker off of this. So this is basically a hydraulic machine that stamps holes in steel and shears steel, and it can do a bunch of other stuff. But and you can, depending on the size of the phase converter that you buy or build and exactly what it is you want to run off of it, like if you want a big milling machine and a big lathe, a big welder, pretty much for one person, it is very easy to take a moderately priced rotary phase converter and run everything in your building off it at once. And in a lot of cases, if you have multiple operators like employees, they can run everything off of one of these giant motor things. They are awesome. I really like them. There's basically no electronics. I don't think there's actually any electronics. I think all that's in that box are like some capacitors or something. Don't take my word for that. Look it up yourself. You know, look up some diagrams on how to build these, because I don't want to tell you guys wrong. But and if you do this, if you buy this one machine, you pay this one-time cost. I mean, this thing is maintenance free. There's nothing on this that needs to be maintained. It doesn't cost you anything daily or monthly to use, you know, so to speak. You just buy once, cry once. Anything made for hobbyists or to be used like once or twice a year, it's very flimsy, it's very lightweight, it's not rigid, it's not built to last. And the commercial industrial stuff really, really is. And so that's one of the main benefits of buying 3-phase equipment. You're getting much better equipment. Now, there will be times where, you know, it's the same exact bandsaw, for instance, and it could be spec'd with a 220 motor or a 3-phase motor from the factory, and then it's the same tool. But you look at a big 3-phase drill press that's only available in 3-phase and compare that to the one at your local big box store and tell me which one you'd rather have. Oh, but Chucky, it's really expensive. No, it isn't. This is the best part. People don't have 3-phase power. It is like a complete mystery to most people. I mean, it was to me. This isn't the kind of useful stuff you learn in school. So someone really has to sit you down and tell you about this, or you have to do what I did and buy 3 different kinds of phase converters before you figure out which one is the legit one to have. And most people, they just won't do it. So where I'm going with this is the demand for 3-phase stuff is nil. I mean, it is like next to nothing. I haven't been in the used tools world in like years, because I have pretty much everything I want and whatnot. But I remember when I was buying my first welders, looking at the old transformer style ones like on Craigslist or whatever, the 3-phase ones cost like 1/3 as much as the single phase, you know, aka regular 220 units. You could buy the 3-phase version, the big industrial one that can do a lot more, for 1/3 as much money. Oh, but Chucky, I don't think I can run it to 600 amps in my garage because that takes too much input power. What do you have to weld to take 600 amps? You're comparing it to a machine that's like 160 amps. You know, you get the big 3-phase one, you don't turn it up past, you know, whatever point your breakers trip or whatever. And you know, if you could run something on single phase to produce 160 amps, there's like a 99% chance you can run a comparable 3-phase welder turned down to produce that amount of power. That amount of welding power. Now, this is another thing. You have to figure out how to size the phase converter. You know, and it'll tell you things like, you can find charts that say if that's a 5 horsepower phase converter, it can run a milling machine plus a bandsaw or something. That probably more than that because it's 5 horsepower, but you get the gist of this. It's really easy to look up. And the other thing is, there's a lot of companies that sell rotary phase converters. And if you take a picture of whatever the tag is on the motor of the machine you want to run with it, and you just like email it to them, at any legitimate phase converter company, there's going to be people whose full-time job, or a good share of it, is to do nothing other than sit around and answer these questions. You say, look, I've got this, you know, this I don't know why I'm thinking bandsaws today. I have a lathe. This is the tag off the motor. What do I need to buy to run this? I might also want to use a drill press and a milling machine at the same time. What do you recommend? And they will tell you, buy, you know, our 7.5 horsepower thingamajigger or whatever. And there you go. That's really all there is to it. These are not difficult to wire. Yeah, I built mine on a little rectangular stand. Sorry, my shop looks like a death trap. I mean, this isn't that unusual, but it is getting to be a little bit out there even by my standards. But whatever the case, this is on a little rectangular stand with wheels, and I think I got like 20-25 feet of cord, so I can be a good distance away from that outlet with this thing if I had to move it around. And it opens up a whole new world for you. And there is no reason not to do this. There really isn't. You get much higher quality tools. You get them for less money. You get to listen to that nice hum in the background that gives it that real, you know, heavy duty shop feel. Just being out here. I think it sounds nice. I guess the sound of these running drives some people insane or whatever. I kind of like it. But at the very least, it doesn't bother me. And, you know, my advice is don't even jack around with VFDs or static phase converters. Just get a rotary phase converter and go with it. You know, I wonder if everybody figured out just how easy it is to set one of these things up and just how good of a deal it is buying used three-phase equipment. But I know that this will probably never become common because it isn't now. And one thing that I've learned about Western men nowadays, not so much like the generations before about 1950 or so, that's when it started to go downhill, but at least in this respect, people nowadays are simply abhorred by quality tools. That is the only thing I can come up with. The only thing that matters is how cheap is it, and is it from a brand that I know and recognize. This is why when people say, you know, the big well-known power tool brand A who's really gone downhill in the last 10 years, yeah, that's because they figured out that most people, they say, you know, I need a hammer drill. Let's just use a hammer drill as an example. I need a hammer drill. I wonder what, you know, brand A has to offer. Oh, that's really cheap. I'm gonna buy it. And then they do, because they buy it only on price and on brand recognition. And you can get most people to pay for anything. And I mean anything, any number of like frivolous features or like cushy stuff or anything that looks like a status symbol. You can make the baseball edition bandsaw or whatever, and people will pay more for that. They will pay for anything other than quality. That's the main thing. Even if it's cheaper, even if the three-phase bandsaw is $350 on Craigslist or whatever, and it's been up there for 2 months because nobody's bought it, you know, people will sooner buy the low quality, like 110 volt power one, not even 221. They would rather buy the 110 volt one for like $500 than the three-phase one for $350 with nothing wrong with it and ready to plug into the wall and use. I don't really like it, but you know what? If you're one of the people who's not like that, it's pretty sweet because you have your pick of awesome machinery. And like I said, I got no regrets about this. You know, this lathe over here, that's a Clausing lathe. I think I paid like a third less for that. This big British made, you know, three-phase industrial machine. I paid like a third less for that than the cheap Chinese 220 volt one. And this came with a bunch of tooling. Like, once you know about this, it will blow your mind that not everybody does it, except they won't, because like I said, looking at anything that will last more than 10 years, that's the only thing I can come up with. It causes the average person physical discomfort. If you want quality stuff on a budget, one of the main things that I would do differently if this shop got abducted by aliens tonight, one of the first things I would do when I started rebuilding tomorrow morning is I'd order another phase converter, probably that same exact one, and I would start searching the old Craigslist and searching the Facebook Marketplace for three-phase stuff, because it is bloody brilliant. And once you get to use it and you get used to using proper industrial grade tools, you wouldn't want to go back to the homeowner stuff, even if it was cheaper, which it isn't. So anyway, that's my video of the day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more. A little bit of a rant, but now you know, three-phase stuff for the win.